welcome back, everyone, to a brand new edition of Virtue's Rage right here on the BigVitoBrand.com. And I am Virtue, the debate king, the troll slayer of no DQ, with Dr. Jargo, and we are ready to rant and rage about something. Not rave, rage. What's up, Jargo?
Man, I guess we better warn all of the listeners this week, because this is my third podcast of 4 that I'm doing today. And on the previous 2, I've been accused of turning heel. So who knows where this conversation's going to go? Well, actually, I have an idea, and people might not like that one either.
My golden retriever, when we were off the air in between podcasts here, came over and I petted him, and he's losing his summer coat. So guess what? I got freaking golden retriever hair in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's why I was picking at my tongue. You have a question. You said you had something regarding John Cena for me, because I was kind of getting upset with people. Like, they always go back to Roman failed. The WWE is the guy. That's why, Cena was holding 3 to 4 million. Now Roman's 2.2 million. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Like, there's so many different things I can say, but I was like, I don't really want that as a topic. And I know we've kind of talked about ratings and different eras and how streaming's affected it and the global reach of WWE and getting their product out in different ways. I don't want to talk about that. I want to know what you have to tell me about the one we can't see because he's not there right now, John Cena.
What is the legacy of John Cena? And I say this in the context that, when John Cena became the man, right? Every measurable fan metric went down. Through the course of John Cena's entire run on top, fan interest declined for the WWE. The total viewership went down, house show attendance went down. We saw the audience split with "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks."
Yep.
But we also have, the 16-time world heavyweight champion, John Cena. We have the 5 moves of doom. But I think the most interesting thing about John Cena is, under his tenure as the top guy, the WWE made more money than any other given point throughout the WWE's history. So you have business going up, you have fan interest going down. What is the legacy of John Cena?
So it's interesting that you say that, because when I look at John Cena, he had a lot of he had the longest run at top than anybody in WWE. It was a long time. I mean, even towards the end there, he was still getting pretty big matches. So was about 2005, and we could really say till about 2015. That's kind of when Roman got anointed as John Cena 2.0 by Vince McMahon. So to me, I used to write a little bit over on No DQ, and I made this saying called the John Cena effect. And to a point, it was what you were saying, how that was their model. One superstar, right, is the guy of the company. And, you had your Batistas come in and out. Brock Lesnar went away. Shawn went into retirement. You had the Taker, but he got into that, just the WrestleMania stuff every year. Edge retired from an injury. You had the brief blip of the CM Punk era. Then, he got unhappy and left. Daniel Bryan got hurt. And it was the constant was John, Brock came back eventually, but John Cena was like the only guy there. It was like a one main event era. What did we have before that in the Attitude Era? Rock, Austin, Foley got pushed. Taker was still there. Triple H got pushed. And I feel that's why it was so popular then, because they had, even though it was Austin, right, and then it kind of went to The Rock, they still had a revolving door of possibilities in the main event. When the Cena era came, people were coming and going, and it was just all about Cena. And I blame the heat that Roman got is the failed John Cena 2.0, because Vince was trying to push him like a superhero. I made this thing up and I called it the John Cena effect. So the legacy to me is Cena. He is the PG guy during the time where they were established themselves as a publicly traded company. I know it happened a little bit before the Cena era, and they were finding ways to make money beyond your normal ways. Like, how can we sell our past library? How can we make bigger money in these TV deals? And so I don't know, how would you, like, to me, Cena, his legacy is the PG superhero. I can't explain it, but it's just like, if we can make the kids happy and sell T-shirts, if the adults are angry, but the kids and the older people pop to John Cena, we'll be okay. If he sells out house shows, or at least sells a good amount of tickets, which Cena has proven to do, we'll be okay. So I just feel like it's that his legacy, to me, it's that like that cartoony PG, what's the face of my publicly traded company, to PG era, so advertisers don't get pissed. I don't know how you want to explain that in a couple of words. How would you do it? Like, am I onto something here?
You said something inside of that was really
you put me on the spot. I was not ready for this, so that's why I'm rambling.
Yeah, no, but you said something really, really interesting.
Okay.
That I guess I hadn't kind of thought about. When you look at the WWE, the WWF, the WWF, right? I mean, whether it was Bruno, whether it was Hogan, whether it was Cena, whether it was Roman now, the only time that they ever went to a full cast, where it wasn't just the one guy, like Stone Cold was the man and everybody
if you had
knew.
To pick from the group, but there was a group of them.
Did you just explain why people like AEW?
That's a good point. I mean, now, okay.
I mean, because it's more of a cast. It's not, just that one focal point.
That's true. But my challenge back to you, and it's funny how Cena's the focal point of all this. If you want to say that that's AEW now with the cast of characters that are main events, in whose eyes, the wrestling bubble of Dynamite still hasn't done more than what it initially did. It's opening night 1.4. And we'll give it time. It's only been 2 years. We'll see what happens. But a cast of characters appealed back in the Attitude Era to me, to people that didn't even like wrestling. I question if the AEW ones can. I question it. I'm not saying it can't. But I remember I was in high school. Like, I remember preps, jocks, even some girls, like, you wouldn't expect them to like wrestling. Stone Cold, because, my dad hates his job and he's talking about this guy that can go up and beat his boss. The Rock's like this, movie star looking guy that comes out and says jabroni. Like, it was a weird time. And that's a good analogy to AEW. Somehow Cena's the link to all of this, though, because the AEW bubble of fans that want that are getting what they want, they grew to despise WWE for pushing the Cenas, because we went from the Attitude Era, having good competition in WCW, and to a point, in a niche way, ECW, to back to the corporate company owning all of wrestling and pushing one guy. And they got a little taste of freedom with Punk. He left. Okay, well, now Daniel Bryan's our guy, but he got hurt. And here we are. It's one big timeline with different tangents. But what is that constant? Is John Cena that constant to where wrestling is, where it's at today, in terms of the niche group of fans? When I say niche, let's be honest, 1.5 million people is the niche, and that's still a lot of people.
Right.
The casuals have shrunk. So did John Cena lose casuals? The niches were never going to go away. Whether they hated Cena or Reigns or not, they were just going to gravitate to something they could talk about. What happened to the casuals?
Well, and I think the thing was, the casual fans were into characters like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was a rebel that people could connect with. When you have when you have the face of the company is John Cena, and he's out there doing this cornball stuff, people just rejected it and just ended up turning it off, and it's kind of the same way. Not to go on too much of a Japan diatribe, but Hiroshi Tanahashi is very much that same person.
You were telling me that
as John Cena, where the business was kind of down and they threw the whole thing on Tanahashi's back. And it wasn't really until you started seeing the emergence of kind of this new cast of characters, the Okadas and the Naotos, that things maybe, and this is just a crazy idea. Maybe people want to watch more than just the top guy, because we've actually heard the stories. Mike McCarthy is a former creative team member who has made the comment many a times that the creative meetings would go like this. Vince walks into the room. Vince sits down. What do we got for Cena this week? They tell him what we got for Cena. Okay. And then Vince gets up and leaves. The only thing that he was really concerned with, what's Cena doing? What's Hogan doing? What's Roman doing? And he doesn't care about the rest of the show. And you see it when you watch SmackDown. The Roman Reigns stuff is freaking great. The rest of the show sucks. And I'm not going to sit and watch for 2 freaking hours for 10 goddamn minutes of entertainment. Screw this. I'm not going to watch it. And that's what has happened to the casual fan.
How do they fix that? Like, is it unfixable because Vince is 76 years old and he's set in his ways and it's never going to change? I mean, look what he's done with NXT. And I know we did another show and a couple of us were liking the WWE colorful Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, Kevin Dunn thing. You were kind of like not feeling it. How can WWE fix that very problem that you mentioned to get whether it's casual fans or maybe the diehard fans that have abandoned WWE and only watch AEW? Because there's been times in WWE that mid-card has been really good.
Absolutely.
But it's never consistent. It goes through spurts, like maybe 1 year here. And then, the Attitude Era, they obviously focused on everything, even though, Austin, The Rock, and all. But, I mean, Foley came up and became a star in the Attitude Era. And you never knew then. Like, I'm going back, they had the competition. They were getting their butts kicked. They had to change up something. But, when you're watching the Attitude Era, I mean, Kane had a run at the top with a gimmick.
Right.
And how can WWE fix, like, for themselves? And likewise, how can AEW get more bigger characters to get casuals? How can WWE get more diehards back that like a well-rounded show? And how can AEW get more casuals that like the stuff that WWE pushes? Like, it's almost like, can't you just work together, like, to boost the business, and you do a little bit what they do and you do a little bit what they do? I mean, what do you think?
Well, let's look at WCW. Okay. When WCW went on that streak of 83 weeks that forced Vince out of his comfort zone, what were they doing? Right? Like, you had Hogan on top, you had Sting on top, right? You knew who the big stars were. But I have always argued that what really made WCW was that undercard. When you look at the cruiserweight division, when you look at what they were doing with the TV title, the US title, I always felt that undercard was so vital to the success of Monday Nitro. When WWE took the reins back, it was because they were going off that same. Vince Russo said, if everybody that's going to be on the show is going to have a story, bro, everybody's got to have something to do. That's the only way that you're going to get everybody over, right? Now we do these Saturday Night Live type shows where there's no continuity throughout the show. There's no common thread, as Brad Shepard was talking about when we did the sit down roundtable. When WWE was good, it was that ensemble cast. I think with AEW and the way that they are formatting their shows, that's very, like, you look at everybody on that roster and it's like, oh, Darby's doing this, Miro's doing this, Kenny Omega's doing this, Christian's doing this. Like, there's so many different stories that are going on. We know that inside of AEW, things are ran a lot more like New Japan, right? Where you only have a couple of guys on the creative team and, like, okay, Virtue, you and Jargo, you're going to be working together for the next 6 months. Go figure it out. Let me know what you got.
Yeah.
Right? They're letting the pro wrestlers be pro wrestlers and tell pro wrestling stories. When you get into the WWE, they have so many writers and everything is so micromanaged that they can't begin to have, oh, we can't write a story for every person on the roster. Do you know how much time that would take? Well, how about if you let them write their own stories? What if you let them write their own promos? What if you let professional wrestlers be professional wrestlers instead of Hollywood actors? Maybe that's what's missing.
As I'm sitting here thinking, like, when you mentioned that about WCW right? They were signing all the wrestlers that they could, building that main event, building the NWO. And looking back, you know what my appeal to WCW was? It was Jericho. It was Raven's Flock. It was
Absolutely.
DDP as the United States champion. I think he beat Kurt Hennig for it. And I was like, sure, you waited to see Sting in the rafters at the end of the show or whatever. What's Brett going to do when he comes over? But during that waiting period, all that stuff in between, it was entertaining. I mean, you had Mean Gene. The recipe was perfect. And like WWE has all these writers today, okay? At one point in time, I remember hearing that they were hiring a lot of like ex-soap opera writers. Well, here's my problem. There used to be a dozen soap operas on TV. Now it's like 4.
Yeah.
They all lost their jobs because their writing might not have been great, or it became overplayed. Why would you hire a bunch of ex-writers they couldn't keep soap operas on television? So there needs to be a more intimate group of creative. Definitely. I mean, I agree with that. I always have.
I think the answer to your question is they're a publicly traded company and they're trying to appeal to stockholders, right? Because they're not trying to cater to the actual fans anymore. They're catering to Wall Street. And while we know professional wrestling is completely different than everything else, right? It's its own form of entertainment. But you know what they want to hear? Oh, well, we got the lead writer from The Bold and the Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and that's now, we've heard these rumors. They get these incredible deals from Fox and from USA, NBC. The whole Saudi Arabia thing, I mean, that's just another story there, the way they get money and still go over there. And I wouldn't feel safe. But what happens? Like, we know the ratings aren't where Fox wants them, where USA wants them.
Right.
And we talked about this before. It's the next time they have TV deals, they rely on that as their main income. Well, what if they can barely get half? What's the NXT deal? You were mentioning something on Twitter about SmackDown going to USA down the road, and then they get NXT money. How much is NXT's money? I know it's small, but
yeah, it's like $130 million
a year or
yeah.
total.
No, like in total, it's like $130 million. It's like $65 million a year or something like that.
Okay, so that,
and it's like,
USA, they can't go from $1 billion to like that. So they're going to need, I mean, I'm sure Nick Khan is working his deal. The only option they're going to have is to sell the streaming. And the only way to get, you sell the company. You sell to Disney or whatever. Like, it's almost like they're going to have no choice but to sell at some point.
Well, and that's what Nick Khan is there for, right? I mean, like that Nick Khan that's what he is known for, taking a failing company and turning it around to the point where somebody else will buy it. That's Nick Khan's history, right?
And what's he going to push? Well, look at all this competition out here for exclusive streaming content.
Right.
You'll be the only one that has WWE. So this is how much we want for it.
But the problem is, and this is, this is almost an economics lesson, right? This is what happens when there's competition inside of the marketplace, right? Because now Fox and USA, NBC Universal are going to be able to sit down and say, you're drawing about, 300,000 more viewers than AEW Dynamite, and TNT is paying them $150 million a year, and we're paying you $250 million a year. Why would we do that?
Let me ask you reverse though. Could, looking at how much those other networks pay WWE, could AEW try to get more? Hey, look, WWE's making this much from Fox and NBC, and our ratings we're only a 2-year company. And I'm not saying AEW is going to get WWE billion-dollar money, but they're going to have a higher, their next contract with TNT should be an increase by default.
And it's going to reset the marketplace, right? I mean, like we see this inside of the NFL all the time where a quarterback comes up as a free agent, suddenly completely resets the market. And Aaron Rodgers, who was overpaid 2 years ago, is now severely underpaid, right? It's just the way these contracts work out. Here. Another great example, like how does Dak Prescott get $40 million and Tom Brady's making, $25 million? Like, explain that one to me. the way that the economics are going to work out here, WWE was in a great position when they were the only game in town and they were the only ones providing this type of content. Now there's a new kid in town, and if nothing else, AEW is going to reset the market, and it's going to be fascinating, where AEW say that they get, a little bit of an increase. Okay, great. AEW's happy with that. TNT's happy because the ratings that they're pulling in are way higher than they were. And suddenly, in order for WWE to stay on USA, they have to actually take a pay cut. That's going to be a really interesting dynamic to see what is going on here. Because when we talk about it in context, right? What would TNT be running on Wednesday night instead right now? A Marvel movie that you've seen 50 times?
And what were those drawing? Like a few 100,000?
Yeah, a couple 100,000. So TNT is ecstatic with AEW Dynamite, whereas USA Network remembers when Raw was getting 8 million viewers, and now we can't crack 1.8.
Remember, WWE's main form of income used to be house, obviously merch, gate sales, and pay-per-view. Maybe this whole NXT 2.0 is because somebody in WWE realized they might have to get not all the way back to that model, but reinvent themselves again, because that used to be first main source of income. That's become secondary because of these streaming and TV deals. They're going to have to rely on that more, probably. Maybe some people are realizing that, and they need to set up for that again. Because let's be honest, merch nowhere close to what it was in the Attitude Era. I mean, that was just unbelievable. I mean, even WCW with the NWO shirts, they obviously weren't smart about it as well as WWE was. But yeah,
well,
I mean,
we kind of run in different wrestling circles, right? Like you have a much more WWE centric kind of following.
Yeah.
Right. But in the circles that I run in, okay, here it is. Today is Thursday, the 23rd, right? People are still talking about the Okada versus Tanahashi match at the G1 Climax, which was absolutely incredible. They're talking about Tetsuya Naito's knee injury. They're talking about that is legit, unfortunately. He's going to be out of the rest of the G1, but that's a whole other topic, right? And they're talking about Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. There's a WWE pay-per-view in 3 days. And they're like the number 4 or 5 story inside of the world of professional wrestling right now. 2 years ago, that would sound absurd that we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now about Roman Reigns and Finn Balor and Brock Lesnar. And, it's just that whole story. It's kind of on the back burner, and the pay-per-view's in 3 days.
You and I are always on the same page. We both like Finn Balor. I've always liked him, but I've always put him on the back burner. Yeah, especially when he was in NXT. Not his fault. I just wasn't a big NXT fan the last few years. But the good thing is at least WWE still has some of the pro wrestlers there,
right? And
they have to. This is a culture now of wrestlers wanting to leave for the greener pastures of AEW, the indie darlings or whatever. I want to see WWE make some happy and stay. And, whether that's your Seth Rollins we got Owens is on the bubble, Finn Balor, because they know they're going to need them guys too. I mean, right? So Ciampa, right? Gargano's still in NXT. So this is interesting. We're going to have to see how it develops, but
the next 4 to 5 months are going to be really telling when guys like Gargano's contract comes up in December, guys like Owens' contract when it comes up in January, because Gargano is one of the more fascinating ones to me. I look at that AEW roster right now. Where does Johnny Gargano fit?
Yeah.
Like the best place for Johnny Gargano right now is on SmackDown in the Daniel Bryan role, being that vanilla white meat babyface up there getting his ass beat by Roman Reigns, and hopefully maybe someday he can just happen to pull one out.
That's perfect point right there. And who knows, you got Candice LeRae pregnant, gonna have a baby, but she'll come back and work because Becky Lynch is setting a trend here, and that could be a new WWE does have pieces still that can appeal to the diehard, but they can't fuck it up. So
and
another good show, Jargo.
And that seemingly is what WWE does better than
they have
anything
to stop
right now.
Fucking it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good show. Any plugs?
Find me across Twitter at NotJargo. Find me over at NoDQ. Find me over at HittingTheMarks.com, DestinoPod.com, MichaelJargo.com. I am a freaking podcast whore, man.
Yep, and we're going to do another No DQ review, and that's always fun. So you can follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_virtue. But for Dr. Jargo, this has been Virtue's Rage. Also, Dr. Jargo's Rage right here on the BigVitoBrand.com. Thanks for listening and watching, and we will rage with you next time. See ya.